Alrighty, welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast. Here we are interested in all things purpose. We want to know where and how people find meaning and connection in their lives. In every episode, we're going to be hearing the real life stories of how people have uncovered, understood, and unleashed their own unique sense of purpose. Our hope is that we can all learn from the stories and the journeys of our guests so that we can better find a sense of purpose in our own lives. I'm host James Glover, performance coach and purpose nerd. I'm incredibly excited to be exploring these stories with you. So let's get going, shall we? So my guest today, the wonderful Isabel Coman, a lady who has been included in the top 100 most influential women in engineering from the Financial Times. Isabel is currently the Director of Engineering and Asset Strategy at TfL. She's got over 20 years of industry experience, is a chartered civil engineer specializing in railway infrastructure, and is also a fellow at the Institution of Civil Engineers. Isabel is passionate about the improvement of diversity and women in transport, and she aspires to have a highly visible leadership presence. Together with her extensive past project experience, like St. Pancras and Crossrail and HS2 and many more, she's empowering and inspiring a generation of engineers. Not to mention having been managing director for in-house services and estates at the Houses of Parliament. An incredible person and what I think is going to be an important conversation for us. Isabel, welcome. Wonderful to have you here. I guess I'm really interested in what it feels like when you hear all of that played back in that way.
Well, thank you very much for having me, James. It's surprising, you know. I've literally just worked very hard. And I've gone to work, and it's been really important to me that I do a good job. I've loved what I've done. Um, and I suppose it just feels like if you bunch 25 years into a few sentences, maybe that's how it sounds. So it sounds good, yeah, if I'm really honest, and I am proud of it. But uh, yeah, it's definitely it's sort of not what I set out to do particularly, and it's aggregated sounds better than probably it is.
Well, I think what I really love here is just you kind of owning the awesomeness, but also acknowledging the reality of being able to create an introduction like that and kind of hold those two things. And immediately really interested by that comment of it's not what I set out to do. So let's definitely explore that in this conversation because the purpose of the Excitable Soul podcast really is it's not about the things that we've just used to introduce you, which is what we do and what we've done. This podcast is really about who you are, what sits beneath all of that, and has enabled you to create the experiences that have come together for an introduction like that. And as we kind of know, we're really interested in understanding how you uncovered, what were some of the experiences that shaped who you are. What are the ways in which you've really wrestled with and tried to understand who you are and what's meaningful to you, and then where have been the leaps of faith, the moments of courage, the moments of kind of belief in what might be possible rather than what could be, that have enabled you to kind of arrive at where you're at right now. And so I guess I'm interested in just kind of diving in right at the beginning. What do you feel are some of the moments that have kind of really underpinned who you are right now?
Um, it it's something I've thought about, and in our conversations, I guess I've thought about it quite a lot, and that is, definitely for me, it goes back to being very young and being brought up in a family where I suppose it was very important that you went to work, you worked hard. There was a certain, a real like expectation, I guess, that you did that.
Yeah.
But also one that in terms, it was really important what you did, and that there was in that endeavor, you had to sort of be able to say how you were contributing to society. And although that was, I can't remember that there ever being an explicit conversation on that. But it was definitely, it was definitely the expectation. And I think that was really hardwired into me.
Yeah.
I also grew up in a family, I suppose, where the adults in it um, did felt they were contributing, felt
Yeah.
that's what they did. From my perspective, it looked like that's what they were doing. So
Yeah.
I was just really, just very, very influenced by them.
Yeah.
And then I think it, for me, it's never been about making that as an active decision. I haven't particularly chosen between, well, that I'm taking that decision because it contributes to society and this one doesn't.
Yeah.
But I think it's, it certainly has influenced me. And I suppose it also helps me judge whether what I'm doing is the right thing.
Okay.
So, the conversation around purpose, and you and I again have talked a lot about purpose, but eh, and I think I'm much clearer on what it is now. I'm much more able to sort of be explicit about it. But even as I've gone along, I guess that has always been a kind of inner judge for me,
Yeah.
to know that I am. It's not. And I've picked a career, I guess, where it's very easy to be able to say you're doing that.
Well, I guess there are
yeah,
definitely some tangible outcomes, right? I built some
yeah,
stuff. I
exactly.
can see it.
Yeah, clearly that nails that purpose.
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
There's a couple of things already, Isabel, that are just kind of piquing the curiosity. And one thing there you said, you've had conversations now to create a clarity of purpose, and you feel much clearer now on what that is, and how you see it and understand it. And I want to come back to that in a moment, if that's okay. But before that, you talked about almost a kind of an intuitive sense that was kind of within you, that you used as a barometer for kind of decision making. Am I on track, or do I feel this is the right thing for me? That's an incredibly powerful thing to be able to tap into. So what did that feel like? What were those experiences that kind of created that almost unconscious intuitive experience within you?
Oh God, I think that's really hard. I think genuinely, because I am in um a profession where you know infrastructure really, at the end of the day, does serve society.
Mm.
I mean, not always in a good way. Um, I think that just it means, I don't think that's quite been the thing for me. I think it's more been a check in. Although I could have made decisions to go and t- to work in areas of infrastructure that maybe don't contribute in quite the same way, or don't have necessarily a positive impact. And I think, in terms of the vast majority of what I've done has been around public transport.
Yeah.
Um, it's been again, it's probably it's been an easy place to play, right?
Yeah.
I could have been I could have been worked in medicine, or in health, or there's lots of places where I probably could have equally jumped into that pot
Yeah.
and fill my boots with serving society. And I do feel a little bit like I've had it easy in that sense. And I have to say, just because we have this joke, because my brother was clearly brought up in exactly the same context as I was,
Yeah.
and he says it to me. He says he doesn't work in something that's necessarily serving society in the same way or contributing, and his view is, yeah, you do it all for me, Isabel. I'm off the hook.
I love that kind of that sense of meaning is still within him, but he's just kind of abdicated responsibility for it.
Totally.
Gotta love a sibling relationship, haven't you? Right. But I guess what I almost kind of want to circle back around to is that kind of that insight that you shared there of, there wasn't necessarily an explicit conversation about, it's what we're doing here is about making a contribution, and making a contribution to society, and making a contribution to society that's making society better. How did you experience then that as a child? What were the things that you saw? What were the things that you kind of felt that were kind of beginning to lay the foundations, do you think?
So I had three a number of adults in my life. I had my parents and my aunt who were working, and they all on a Sunday we used to sit down all as a family, and um you know m- my dad worked for the BBC, my mum worked for the British Library, and my aunt worked for Great Ormond Street. And literally, we didn't talk about anything else. So literally, we'd sit on a Sunday and we'd go from one to the other to the other. So it was just like there wasn't. Well, I'm probably doing a real disservice to my parents. We're going to sound like total workaholics, but so the conversation was about that. It was always about and they are all, they're all public sector organisations that are making a contribution, whether that's
Yeah,
to people, children's health, or you know, you other ways. But so that, I think it was just the backdrop. It was such a huge part of our lives.
yeah. And I'm kind of imagining Sunday lunch at your house, and because you've just named three pretty significant British institutions there, and the type of conversation that would go round the kind of the dinner table almost at Sunday lunch, and I guess the sense of almost kind of passion and commitment that they would have felt to that work, and you would probably just,
Absolutely, and
whether you
and I think
understood the context or not, the kind of the conviction that they would have been speaking with almost would have been infectious.
absolutely, and I think the other thing was they were always, all of them in their own way, and they're very, very, very different individuals, were all set on making things better. So they weren't static in the roles that they did either. They were always, there was always a sense of, I guess, things they were trying to change, or
Yeah,
things they felt could be better. That sort of predominated within those conversations. So it's sort of, I guess that's also part of me. It's like, it's not only to go in and do something. Actually, you've made me think, because I am very much a change person. I'm always thinking,
yeah,
how do we connect these ideas, and how can we move forward? And I think, there was some of that I clearly got just from how I saw people behave around me.
yeah. Amazing, amazing. And so when you connect the dots now then between those kind of formative experiences and, as you said, a greater level of clarity on purpose, and your sense of purpose, how do you make sense of it now? Where does it become you know where does it become useful for you in the way in which you make choices and decisions in the world now?
So I think um, I think that's part of what I think is. I think that's still in me. I think it is part of my purpose. Is a clear part of my purpose. I would not be able. There are absolutely roles, opportunities, and I guess decisions I could make that would take me away from that, and I could not. I don't think I could physically go and work hard every day doing something where I didn't feel it was contributing.
Yeah,
I think that's so hardwired into me, that's I couldn't. I don't know what other pressures would come on me
yeah,
that would allow me to be able to do that. And maybe I'm in a very fortunate position, actually, that I get that choice.
yeah,
Um, but I think the things that probably weren't there in that sense, and that's about being a child and not being an adult, and not having experienced, I suppose, the working environment, really, was actually the was is the part about the people that come with that. So I think my other
yeah,
part within me is about I love being sort of part of a team, leading a team. Like, for me, it's the people who contribute are, are, are equally important in that purpose. So I want to be in. I don't want to. I suppose my purpose would not be to go and you know make some enormous contribution on my own.
yes, yeah,
That would not fulfill. Like, that would, I would find that a very, very lonely place. So actually, the kind of the people, the team, and the kind of, I suppose, for me, just because, by virtue of what I've done, and the the opportunity to kind of have such a mix of people be like doing something that's greater than they are individually
Yeah.
is the other thing that's really underpins me now. And there's no way I'd have seen that in my early years, but those are other things that have really come to that's the other primary thing that comes to the fore.
Yeah.
um and we've talked about this as well in the context of having young children as well. So for me, it plays out exactly the same there. It's really important to me that, and oh my goodness, I'm setting them up to contribute to society. Ha ha. We'll see how that goes. But they, also, being in the mix with them is
Yeah.
also how are we as a family, and how does that all fit together? And I think it's no different. And I think that's the other really important thing for me is that the clarity has brought is that actually you don't have for me, I certainly don't have a kind of purpose that is mutually exclusive in work from what it is at home.
Yeah.
And actually, it's really lovely to be in a place where actually it doesn't mean you combine work and home. You don't have
Yeah.
to overlap it and smudge it all together,
No.
but actually to be in a place where in your brain there's not a conflict because
Yeah.
there are things that are really important to you,
Yeah.
um, and that can play out in every part of your life.
Yeah, and you're really speaking to something that is so important, and I think really misunderstood in the whole kind of conversation around purpose. Purpose is one of those words that everybody has kind of an understanding of to some degree, but really what you're describing there is this idea that it's a kind of a foundational understanding of what's really important, and you can express that in the different roles that you play. So, that your sense of purpose shines through in the choices that you've made around the work that you do, but your sense of purpose is also shining through in how you want to parent your children, and therefore the experiences that you're creating for them. And often people are almost overwhelmed by what does purpose need to be, and what does it need to look like, and do I need to have a work purpose and a leadership purpose and a parenting purpose, and then you kind of disengage with the whole process, don't you? Because then it's just too much.
Exhausting.
It's too much. Yeah, I'm really exhausted by this. And even if I did clarify it, do I live up to all of those different things? No, thank you. And actually, it's much simpler than that, much more foundational than that. There's just one, and creating an understanding around it gives you the opportunity to use it in these different ways. I think that's a really beautiful point. Yeah. How does it influence the way in which you kind of define what matters to you and define kind of a sense of meaning in your life now then, because you've kind of created this clarity and seen this alignment, if you like, between the roles that you play and your sense of purpose?
um I, I I think it just actually for me makes it it makes it decision making so much cleaner. I think it makes things you wrestle with, in your mind about, what's the right thing to do. I mean, it doesn't make those all really easy,
Yeah.
but it does, whether you choose the next job, whether what is a role right for you. I think even in very small things, and I think around, whether you say about how do you live up to purpose, how do you live up to having lots of different things you're
Yeah.
aiming for. I think it actually means you can actually use it more as a barometer of yourself,
Yeah.
and actually you're not perfect, so
Yeah.
that's your kind of underlying thing, that's your intention, and sometimes you might be really bad at it. And you might actually do things that really weren't in that spirit,
Yeah.
shall we say.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have to but it kind of, it, it helps you say that wasn't, and actually I would change myself, or I'd do something different. So I think
Yeah.
it helps. I think it helps, yeah, both in sort of big decision making, but also in that kind of reflecting on yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really hearing the kind of the importance of almost kind of self-kindness around this, which is, yes, I have a sense of purpose, and I'm clear on what's important to me and the contribution that I want to make. But also, I'm a human being, and there might just be times where I get that wrong, and that's okay, because this thing can help me learn. if I've if
Yeah.
I've gone away from it unconsciously, or even consciously, maybe I can go, all right, well, that didn't feel the way that I was hoping it was going to, and it gives you a source to reflect on, a frame to reflect on, so that you can go, yeah, all right, maybe I won't do that again, or actually, if I do it differently, maybe it should look like this. And so, instead of a stick to beat yourself with, it's a mechanism for self-kindness.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Where has it helped you make some leaps of faith, Isabel? Can you give us an example of,
So absolutely, moving out of what was a career in contracting and working, delivering really, really sort of big infrastructure projects with Costain, and then moving to the House of Parliament to run the estate there. And that was, for me, I probably won't make a leap of faith in my career as big as that again. I can't. But I was moving out of a working environment I've been in for over 20 years. So I knew what I was doing. I knew how that um, um, sector functions, how I fitted into it. My network was really, really strong, and in fact, I trained all that. I could do that job
yeah,
basically.
yeah,
And I moved to the House of Commons, and I suppose it felt like jumping off a cliff. I was literally going into an environment where I didn't know a single person.
yeah,
I didn't know the ecosystem there, how it operated.
yeah,
I had never been client side, in a public sector organisation myself.
yeah,
And quite frankly, I was going to do a different job. I was not running a big project anymore. I had capital projects as part of my portfolio, but I was doing so much more than that in sort
yeah.
of running the estate. And yeah, I literally took my little tool bag of, well, just what's in my head here, and sort of jumped off the cliff there.
And when you,
And it felt very brave.
yeah,
It
yeah,
felt brave because I didn't know I had no real sense of what I was stepping into,
yeah.
other than I knew it would be different. Um, yeah, so that's probably my bravest moment.
And can you, so, even if we just kind of play back that experience, completely different sector, you'd been in one that you'd known intimately and had ultimately trained for. It was a completely different jungle that you that you were going into. What the wildlife looked like, no idea. And it was a sense of, even the job itself was going to be completely different. Yet you felt almost a clarity to say, yes, that is the thing, that's the thing I need to go and do next. Where did that come from? What was the kind of the internal experience that you were having when you wrestle with all of that, which sounds like, oh my god, there's craziness in making that decision, yeah, actually it it was also something that you felt like you wanted to be brave about doing. So what helped and supported that for you?
Um, I mean, some underlying things, going back to our early bit of the conversation. For me, um, I was going into an organisation that clearly has it has a clear contribution to make to
Yeah,
society. It's very, it's key to how our whole kind of democracy functions. So that was quite easy,
yeah,
um, and it was going to be a big team. So that was also quite, in those sorts of senses, that's quite easy. It ticks those boxes. Um, that uh, I I felt very. They were very excited about me. They really wanted me to join. I
Yeah,
think that was an important factor in that decision making.
for sure.
Um, which I don't know that if that's a good criteria, but it felt that those are probably the underlying things, and I felt like being a bit brave. I felt like testing myself,
Yeah,
and I suppose I'd got to a place where I knew I could do what I was doing. I
yeah,
really knew it. I was very comfortable in that, and this felt like it would really, I'd really see, right?
yeah,
How independent I could be. And I suppose actually something I haven't talked about, which is just in very much in me is my sort of general battle actually to be independent. I
yeah,
feel that's very important, it fed that as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
I was going to just be out there, and that's not working on my own. It's just being responsible for myself.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and what's really wonderful is the way that you kind of you're interweaving these really significant insights on where and how you find meaning. So you know, there's something here about team and others. So whether that's your team at home, which is the kids, as you've talked about, whether that's the team in the work environment and the work context, so other people, who am I working with? There's this sense of contribution to something that's much bigger than yourself, and actually really framed around society. What's the societal impact here? Because you can frame impact and service to others in lots of different ways, but that was really critical. But then this other element here of kind of almost defiant independence. I want to be me, and I kind of want to do this in my own way. And what's incredible in what I'm kind of hearing you talk about is it's not one of those things is not at the cost of the other. They all interplay, they all interconnect to enable you to kind of feel this sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. And so I love the way you describe, well, I wanted to be brave. There was the societal bit, there was the team bit, and actually there's an opportunity for me to go in there and do it my way because they wanted me. Um, yeah, that must have been a really incredible moment when you kind of made that choice to take that leap. How did that feel when you went, yeah, I'm going to go do that?
so I said I'm going to go do that, and then but actually my mum reminded me the other day that I'd said to her, "Oh my goodness, geez, have I made a really bad decision?" When then this was long after it was kind of irreversible, but I hadn't actually quite got there yet. And she, of course, her really good advice to me was I clearly hadn't made a really bad decision.
Excellent, excellent.
So I suppose that I did definitely in between between finishing and starting, I did sort of question myself. Um, so that's how it felt. It felt like to me like jumping off. It felt like jumping off a cliff, really.
Yeah, and again, the kind of the very nature of uncertainty in the world that we live in right now, and the kind of the sense of faith and belief in what might be possible because you have a clarity around a sense of purpose and what the opportunities that present themselves, and what you're able to do because of that. I'm not sure that there are any other or many other levers that we can pull as human beings that give us the confidence almost to be
Yeah,
able to go and do things like that.
yeah, agree.
So where do you think, what might be possible if you think about, future leaps of faith almost? What do you ever let your mind go to those kind of places? I'd be really intrigued.
Um, I suppose No, at the moment, I'm not in that
Yeah.
moment at the moment.
Yeah.
But I have moved organisation. Clearly, I've taken on a brilliant role actually in TFL, and I think actually, coming back to what helps you decide, it was being offered the role at TFL. I knew it was a brilliant job
Yeah.
for me. Um, I knew it would sort of literally tick all my boxes, and that there is no disappointment in that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I suppose, but that has been, it's not a leap of faith in the same way
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
It's a big leap, though. It's
Yeah.
a leap again uh, into an environment I'm not so familiar with, and where I don't have any network, where I suppose where there's quite an expectation on what I deliver.
Yeah.
Um, but that feel, I like, yeah, maybe there's something in that feeling. I quite like that.
Yeah.
I like that, sort of, uh, it, you know, having to be resourceful. I mean, it can be quite, it can be quite exhausting
Yeah. Of
actually,
course. Yeah.
because you can have, yeah, it can be exhausting. And I don't think it's something, there's something exciting in it, but I'm not sure. That wouldn't be a driver for me. I wouldn't suddenly now feel like I always have to be in a position where I'm kind of really living on,
Yeah.
you know, living, starting anew.
Yeah.
I don't, that doesn't necessarily um, fit in, but it's been exciting doing that. It's quite fun doing it again. And, um,
So what would be your um what would be your words of wisdom? What would be your words of advice for people who are um wrestling with this idea of purpose? And is it worth investing the time and energy in trying to clarify a kind of a sense of purpose? What would you say to them given the journey that you've been on?
I, I mean, absolutely. For me, it, it's it's been, I suppose, actually quite life changing, because it just makes everything so much easier. And it's not about, okay, I'm guessing people might listen to what I've said and go, oh my goodness, like really, with the contribution to society thing, like, yeah, but it doesn't have, it doesn't, it sounds, God, I'm actually a bit embarrassed. It sounds terrible. It sounds really kind of egocentric, like I'm here with my superhero pants on and everything. But but actually, it's just it genuinely for me. I think it's really worth investing in, and I don't think it's a quick thing
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. You've been such a huge, influence on me actually being able to get there. In sort of, um, and it, whilst I had some underlying things that I sort of knew or intrinsically knew. I mean, it took several years really to kind of really get there and really be clear in my own mind. And I think it's really worth that investment,
Yeah. And I mean,
because it just makes, and it's very difficult to describe. It makes life easier. It just makes your decision make for me. And maybe it just was me. I was like, oh my goodness, should I do this? Should I do that? I
yeah.
don't know. Maybe this person, maybe that person, maybe, it, there's so much incoming decision making you have to do. And actually, if you have what's important to you, and that's what we're really talking about,
Yeah.
underlying, and you're really, really clear about it, it just helps that.
Yeah.
And you can get things wrong in that too, and you can say, oh well, that, yeah, like you say, that really didn't contribute very well
Yeah.
to that, to what's important to me.
Yeah.
um but that's also fine.
Yeah. I'm almost hearing a sense of kind of peace. There's almost like a freedom to some degree.
It is freedom. I don't think it's peace. I think there's never peace. Um, not in my world.
Yeah, you're joking.
Yeah, but it's but there's definitely freedom. It is quite freeing, actually.
Yeah,
Um, and um, I even, I think it's actually really important. I think it's really grounding. I think like you say, the world is a very fast changing place, and I think for anyone now, sort of, I think whatever, as an adult, but whatever stage you're at in your career, or whatever else you're doing in life, I think the external world is changing so fast
yeah,
that actually the clearer you are about what's important to you, the better you're able to respond to that.
yeah. Amazing.
Um, because you don't, that's really unpredictable.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Isabel, I think just those words of wisdom are absolutely the place for us to kind of pause this conversation. I think just the whistle stop tour that you have been able to take us on in the last 35 minutes, but the deep sense of reflection and commitment to what's important to you and what that's enabled to you has kind of just shone through in this conversation. I really appreciate you just taking the time to be so open with us, and I have no doubt that the people that are going to be listening and watching will get so much from those experiences. And like you say, how to shortcut 25 years into the best part of 35 minutes. I guess the benefit of that for us is just your insight, and how we can all take something away from that. So thank you massively for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. And for those of you out there who are really inspired by Isabel's journey and are interested in understanding more about your own sense of purpose, come and visit us at the Excitable Soul. There's a number of ways in which we can help out. Until next time, take care. Massive thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. If you are interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your sense of purpose, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.